It is a privilege for me to welcome you to this course on the Book of Revelation that I have entitled Revelation, Vision of Healing. This is the first lecture. My name is Sigve Tonstad. I'm an associate professor of religion at Loma Linda University. The occasion for these lectures is the course under the title Vision of Healing that I'm teaching at Loma Linda University as a web-based course for the spring quarter of 2013. The title I have chosen for the course, Vision of Healing, is very deliberate because I do wish to show, or at least try to show, that Revelation is nothing but a vision of healing, even though its reputation is not quite that. So I hope you will be challenged and that you will also put your imagination to work toward the end of seeing Revelation as the most amazing vision of healing that is found anywhere in literature, and I'm not just thinking about biblical literature. Now to the book itself, the setting of this book, we join the author or the source of the book, who identifies himself as John. He refers to himself, I, John, and his addressees are obviously people that he knows, and he assumes that the people also know him, that his addressees also know him. I, John, your brother who share with you in Jesus the persecution and the kingdom and the patient endurance, was on the island called Patmos because of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus. So here we have who he was and where he was. He was on a real place called Patmos. It is an island off the coast of Turkey, and many people do pilgrimages to the Isle of Patmos. I have not done that. I am not sure that going there would facilitate my grasp of this book. Here is what I did. I went to the University of St. Andrews, which is on a much bigger island, the British Isles in Scotland. St. Andrews is the oldest university in Scotland. It is a very good university. St. Andrews is a very lovely place, very historic place. It was the site of the Scottish Reformation, and one of the people who attracted attention to St. Andrews during those days was the Scottish reformer John Knox, who had a very close relationship to John Calvin. And St. Andrews today is probably less known for its university than for its golf course. To the left here you have the old course at St. Andrews, where the British Open is often played, and St. Andrews is also home to a major golfing museum. I did not come to St. Andrews to golf. I came there to pursue my project, writing a dissertation on the Book of Revelation, and I admit that I was sleepless at St. Andrews for two reasons. Here they are. Why sleepless? Well, number one, because the Book of Revelation is often read as though it is an allegory on the Roman Empire, on opposition to the Roman Empire, a sort of political critique, you might say, of Roman imperial abuses. In scholarly interpretations of Revelation, there is a dominance of what you might call the Roman Empire view, and the view that the Emperor Nero is one of the main villains in this book. This is by far the most commonly held view of among New Testament or Revelation scholars of the more critical bent. So what is wrong with that? Why why would that keep me sleepless? Well, the reason is that the tendency to read Revelation primarily for historical purposes, as though it it is taking stock of a certain historical reality, loses sight of the cosmic scope of revelation, or it relegates the cosmic concerns of revelation to the background. So when I came to St. Andrews, I was fully aware that this is the view most commonly held, and my very wonderful advisors at St. Andrews were somewhat disturbed at my ambition, or even my pretension, to say that the historical concerns of the book of Revelation are secondary, the cosmic concerns are primary, and Revelation sheds light on historical reality from a cosmic perspective. So I wished to foreground the cosmic conflict perspective of Revelation rather than the historical features. And many of you will know that interpretations of Revelation generally break into three main schools. One is called the preterist, meaning that Revelation is mostly about the things that happened in the past. Some say Revelation is continuous historical, meaning that Revelation is more interested in a continuous sort of unfolding view of history. And some are futurists, saying that Revelation is really only interested in the future, and when people who are futurists, they tend to be futurists in the sense that they read Revelation as though it is mostly concerned about events from the 19th century onwards, and bringing ever new, rather inventive or creative ideas to bear on how this book should be interpreted. Now, what is my response to these? That neither of these approaches will suffice, because Revelation is not only concerned about human historical reality. It does take an interest in human historical reality. It does tell the story of human reality from beginning to end, but it does it from a cosmic perspective, where there are more than human actors, and where one of the main protagonists is really not a human being at all, and certainly not the Emperor Nero. Now, that was number one. The second reason to stay sleepless in St. Andrews relates to the dominance of readings that make Revelation the go-to text for a theology of retribution. So in this is also in all interpreters, in all interpretations, whether they are preterist, talking about Revelation as past history, whether they are continuous historical, or whether they are futurist, they tend to read Revelation as though Revelation espouses a theology of divine retribution. I think that is a mistake. And I think it is a mistake partly because, or for reasons that relate to point number one here, regarding reasons to stay sleepless. Failure to grasp the cosmic perspective of Revelation makes many readers read this book as though the scenes that are depicted, seals, trumpets, bowls, God is the one doing it. And the assignment of divine agency to the scenes that are depicted in Revelation makes God seem like the one who is doing all the destruction, all the terrible things that are happening, and it also is the reason why Revelation has been seen as a book espousing a theology of retribution. So what's the alternative to this? Well, the alternative is to be very, very attentive, very vigilant, as one reads this book, to determine whether the actions that are depicted should be attributed to divine or to demonic action. I need not tell you that the theology of this book will be very different, or will be strongly impacted by our decision in this regard, whether the scenes that are depicted are attributable to God or to God's enemy, to the other protagonist in the story. The result of my studies led to this book, Saving God's Reputation, the theological function of Pistis Jesu in the cosmic narratives of Revelation. I have felt for existential reasons that God's reputation needs saving. That's partly because of all the suffering, all the sad things that are happening in the world, and that problem has become much more acute in the wake of the 20th century with the Holocaust, where there has been a profound sense of God's absence and a profound questioning of how God is present in the world, if God indeed is present at all. And I have no doubt that the book of Revelation is a key source to address the existential reality of human beings in the 21st century who have such questions, and who for very legitimate reasons raise such questions. How is God present in the world? Is God present in the world? I do believe that the book of Revelation addresses that question, that concern, in a very helpful, a very wonderful way, I might say. And then there is another side to this, and that is that in order to save God's reputation, or in order for the book of Revelation to be read as a book that saves God's reputation, we also need to save the book of Revelation from many of the interpretations that have done such enormous damage to this book and to the reputation of the book. So here are two concerns. One then relates to God's reputation, the perception we have of the character of God, and the other concern relates to the reputation of the book of Revelation. D.H. Lawrence, who is more famous for things other than his writing on the book of Revelation, he has written rather seedy books, but he says of Revelation that it is a hideous version of Christianity, and it is a repulsive work. And the reason why he and others say this is that they find a message of resentment or harshness in this book. Harold Bloom, who has taught English literature at Yale University and at Harvard University, he says of Revelation that resentment and not love is the teaching of the Revelation of St. John the Divine. Revelation is a book without wisdom, goodness, kindness, or affection of any kind. That's his view. Now, Martin Luther is probably the person who more than anyone else contributed to the low esteem in which Revelation has been held by many Protestant traditions. Luther, if he had had his way, would have liked to exclude the book of Revelation from the New Testament. And here is his reason. I miss more than one thing in this book, and it makes me consider it to be neither apostolic nor prophetic. My spirit cannot accommodate itself to this book. For me, this is reason enough not to think highly of it. Christ is neither taught nor known in it. So, is this a valid criticism of the book of Revelation, or is this a point at which one needs to take a more critical look at the legacy of Luther and his way, his approach to the New Testament, his priorities for what is important and what counts in theology. I rather think it might be the other way. For Luther to claim that Christ is neither taught nor known in the book of Revelation could very well mean that Luther had a deficient view of Christ and a very misguided view of how Revelation should be read. More about that later. Friedrich Nietzsche was not a very influential philosopher in his own time, but his posthumous reputation made him one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. In the 20th century, Nietzsche died just as the 20th century was being inaugurated. And in some ways, some of Nietzsche's philosophical insights or concerns today might seem prophetic of what happened in the 20th century. Nietzsche's view of Christianity is negative because he thinks that Christianity as a whole is an ideology or a theology of retribution, an ideology of resentment. And here is his view of the book of Revelation. What, conversely, did the Jews feel against Rome? He's reading the book of Revelation as a Jewish diatribe against Rome. One can surmise it from 1,000 symptoms, but it is sufficient to carry one's mind back to the Johannian Apocalypse, that most obscene of all the written outbursts, which has revenge on its conscience. One should also appraise at its full value the profound logic of the Christian instinct, when over this very book of hate it wrote the name of the disciple of love. That self-same disciple to whom it attributed that impassioned and ecstatic gospel, therein lurks a portion of truth. However much literary forging may have been necessary for this purpose, what is here in parenthesis, this part of Nietzsche's statement is a statement on the authorship of the book of Revelation. You may know, or we should know, that tradition makes the Gospel of John and the book of Revelation, or they attribute these two books to the same source, to the same author, and usually thought to be the beloved disciple or the Apostle John. Now, many critical scholars do not share that view. They think that there are such divergent stylistic features in these books that it seems difficult to believe that they had the same source. Now, Nietzsche is critiquing the tradition and saying that is one of the most spectacular forgeries in literature to make people believe that such a book of resentment would come from the same source as the Gospel of John, which is thought to be a book of love. So his assessment of Revelation then, he calls it the most obscene of all the written outbursts. It has revenge on its conscience. It is a book of hate. Well, how do you recover from that if you are the book of Revelation? And how does a reading of Revelation that wishes to make Revelation a vision of healing, how does it manage to make that case? John Collins is, in our time, probably the foremost expert on what is called apocalyptic literature. We're talking here of a literary genre, a class, a type of literature originating in Jewish and Christian circles in the time just before the time of Jesus to some time after the time of Jesus. And Revelation is usually classified as an apocalyptic book. and it is also seen as carrying the concerns of the apocalyptic genre. And one of the concerns of the apocalyptic genre is revenge. What we find in Revelation is the projection into the future of what was unfulfilled in the past. Jesus did not destroy the wicked in his earthly life, but he would return with supernatural power to complete the task. Jesus did many wonderful things in the gospel, but he left some things undone, unfinished. And in Revelation, he comes to do it. And the job that hadn't been done was for him to destroy the wicked. And that is really then what Revelation is up to. C.H. Dodd was a British New Testament scholar who wrote prolifically on books attributed to John, to the beloved disciple. He says of Revelation, we are bound to judge that in its conception of the character of God and his attitude to man, the book falls below the level, and not only of the teaching of Jesus, but of the best parts of the Old Testament. So what is a Revelation then? It is a very inferior book. Chris Rowland is a professor in the UK who has written extensively and very, very well on the book of Revelation. He is not here espousing his own view, he's just summarizing what tends to be the popular view of this book, that the apocalypse is about destruction, which is far from the meaning of the word apocalypse, as we will see in a moment. But it is definitely the view. And if you look at movies that have apocalypse in their title, they will be movies about mayhem and destruction and terrible stuff. In the popular view, apocalypse is about cataclysm, death, and destruction. And that's how the Revelation has been seen. Going to Seventh-day Adventist views, let me say here that the Seventh-day Adventist readings will certainly not deny that Revelation contains a vision of healing. But dominant Seventh-day Adventist readings share with other readings that Revelation is also significantly about divine retribution. I should admit right away that I disagree with these readings. It is not a major goal for my course, for this course, to voice that disagreement. And I voice it only in order to facilitate the reading of Revelation on its own terms, not as a criticism of other readings, but it is nevertheless pertinent to our pursuit to see how some of these views have influenced readings in the Adventist tradition. Here is a sample from three major leading interpreters of the book of Revelation in the Adventist community, and this relates to their view of what is happening in the seven trumpets. Who is doing what in the trumpet sequence? And the trumpet sequence features calamity and destruction. So the person who laid the ideological groundwork for this interpretation was a very influential teacher at the theological seminary at Andrews University, teaching at Andrews for many, many years, Dr. Hans La Rondel. He says that in the trumpet sequence we are witnessing God's covenant curses on his enemies. The important point is who is doing what is depicted in the trumpet sequence, and this must be God. according to this view. Now, John Pauline, who has also been teaching at Andrews University for many years, was a student of Dr. La Rondelle, and is now my friend and my dean at Loma Linda University. He says that in the trumpet sequence, the primary focus is on punitive judgment. And who is the acting subject doing the punitive judgments? It would again be God. John Pauline's student, Ranko Stefanovic, has written the most ambitious commentary on Revelation in the Adventist context. I think you might say the most ambitious commentary on Revelation ever written in the Adventist context. He says in the trumpet sequence, we see righteous judgments and vengeance upon those who viciously harassed and oppressed the faithful. Trumpets as divine action. The trumpets as divine punitive action. Now, is that fair? Is that a good reading of the book of Revelation? These interpreters will not deny that Revelation ends on a vision of healing, but they do contribute to the impression in the popular view and in the scholarly community of Revelation as significantly about divine punitive action. And we might need to at least critique and assess that view. Richard Bauckham has written extensively on the book of Revelation. He has two significant books on Revelation, and he was the one reason why I was attracted to St. Andrews to study there. He was one of my advisors, and I'm very grateful for his help and his insights. He says about this book that the Apocalypse of John is a work of immense learning, astonishingly meticulous literary artistry, remarkable creative imagination, radical political critique, and profound theology. So what does the book of Revelation lack according to Baukham's view? Not much. It is a learned book. The person who wrote it was not an unlearned person, even though he writes in awkward Greek. And he has amazing literary artistry. The compositional features of Revelation are just astonishing. He has a creative imagination because he does contribute to putting these various things together in a remarkable way. The book, he says, has political critique. So what is it? What are the sort of political preferences and concerns of the book of Revelation, if indeed it does contain a political critique? And then, most of all, or most important of all, Bauckham says that there is profound theology. Now let's compare these views. Luther, he says that Christ is neither taught or known in it. Dodd, he says that the Revelation falls below the level of the teaching of Jesus and the best parts of the Old Testament. Bauckham disagrees on both counts, claiming that there is profound theology, that Revelation does not strike a dissonant note. It does not strike another note. It does not give us another Jesus than the Jesus we find in the Gospels or in the rest of the New Testament. And Bauckham is quite right to say that in the book of Revelation things come to a head. You come to a sort of zenith view, a top of the mountain view of the New Testament, where you have what he calls the climax of prophecy, and where you have what I call a book that attempts to put the record straight regarding the character of God and thus to save God's reputation. Harold Bloom says that Revelation is not only barbaric but scarcely literate. Bauckham could not disagree more, claiming that Revelation is a work of immense learning and highlighting precisely the literary features, the literary artistry of the book of Revelation. So, by way of summary on my introductory introductory task, you might say, and I wish you to share in this project. And if you need to be sleepless too, a little bit, we will just join John, who was, we can imagine, sleepless on the island of Patmos, sleepless for very valid, significant existential reasons. Because how is God present in human reality? And is God present in human reality in a healing way? So number one, Revelation explains human reality within a cosmic framework. The foot of the Emperor Nero is too small for the shoe of Revelation's imagery. Number two, theologies of retribution fail because they do not take the cosmic conflict theme, the cosmic conflict story of Revelation seriously, or they do not take it seriously enough. I think that applies to just about all the scholarly, all the critical readings of Revelation, and I will say that it also applies to some extent to Seventh-day Adventist readings of this book. In interpretations of Revelation, who is doing what is the crucial question. There has been a tendency to say what is happening here, and then a rather sloppy textual work, rather sloppy hermeneutical work, rather sloppy forensic work, as it were, with regard to seeing who did it. And that is not only then a concern for the text of Revelation, but it is also the big question for the text, you might say, of human reality. Who did it? Who is doing it? What is indeed taking place here? Now, the pictures in this slide here is my home village in Norway. It is actually has the same name as my own last name, Tonstad. It has grown since I grew up there, but I grew up in a home where we did read the Bible. And I will admit that even from my childhood, the last two chapters of Revelation seem to me to be the most wonderful sort of music the human ear could ever hear. And I do wish to pay credit to my upbringing and my background for being in a place and a context where the book of Revelation was read, and where the last two chapters of this book sort of captured my mind, my imagination. And that continued as I went to high school in this school in the eastern part of Norway, where I actually started becoming a serious reader of the Bible myself. And I read Revelation, and I did know these last two chapters of Revelation rather well. It continued as I went to study abroad at Middle East University in Beirut, Lebanon, learning at least a little, or laying the groundwork for reading this book in Greek eventually. And then it has continued as I went to medical school and became a physician at Loma Linda University quite a few years ago now. And who could not, being a physician, who could not, being a person concerned and existentially challenged by the reality of suffering, who cannot be enticed by the book of Revelation? And who can be resistant to read this book as a vision of healing when we read things like this? He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. Now, that is nothing if not a vision of healing. But that is not Revelation's ultimate vision. The ultimate vision is a certain kind of healing. There is a certain, a rarely grasped precision to Revelation's vision of healing. It is not just the healing as we think of it in relation to illness and death. It is healing in relation to a certain view of things, a certain view of God, indeed, or in fact. Because in Revelation, and what might be the most wonderful verse in the book of Revelation, chapter 22, verses 3 and 4, it talks about the end game, the ending of the story, the ending of the cosmic conflict. Now, at the beginning of the cosmic conflict, God's reputation is maligned. God's character is maligned, you might say. Something is said about God that causes angel reality and human reality to take a negative view of God. And there is then misperception of God, there is alienation from God, and there is just a huge, huge fracture relating to creaturely and to human perception of God. But in the ending of the story, the human view of God has been healed, and the relationship between God and human beings has been healed too. But the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will find him worthy of admiration. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. Now that is Revelation's ultimate vision of healing. Please join me in our second lecture, which will relate to method, how to read the book of Revelation.